The signal came from deep space at 3 in the morning. Lieutenant Commander Jake Miller was drinking his 4th cup of coffee when the computers at the Nevada Deep Space Array started going crazy. Red lights flashed across every screen. The machines had never seen anything like this before. Jake ran to the main console and stared at the data. The signal was strong and clear. It was coming from a star system 43 light-years away. But that was not the strange part. The strange part was that it was clearly made by intelligent beings who were not human. "Get Dr. Lisa Park on the phone," Jake told his assistant. "Wake her up if you have to." Dr. Park arrived at the facility 2 hours later. She was Earth's best expert on alien languages, even though no one had ever found any aliens before. She studied the signal for 6 hours before she figured out how to translate it. The message was simple but desperate. It came from something called the Kepler Coalition. They were 7 different alien species who lived together in peace. But now they were dying. Another alien race called the Vorthak Empire was killing them all. The Coalition had already lost 4 of their 7 worlds. The Vorthak soldiers were too strong and too fast. The Coalition's weapons were designed to defend, not to attack. They were peaceful people who had never learned how to fight a real war. The message offered something incredible in return for help. The Coalition had technology that could make spaceships travel faster than light in ways humans had never imagined. They called it quantum crystalline technology. With it, Earth could travel to any star in the galaxy in just a few days. Jake sent the message up the chain of command. Within 12 hours, it reached the highest levels of Earth's government. The United Defense Council met in emergency session. Every military leader and scientist on Earth wanted that alien technology, but there was a big problem. Earth's military was already fighting 2 wars. Most of their ships and soldiers were busy with the Titan mining conflicts near Jupiter. The rest were dealing with the Mars Independence War. Earth had very few soldiers available to send to another star system. General Kate Ross stood up in the meeting room and looked at the other leaders. "We have one option," she said, "but you are not going to like it." The other leaders waited for her to continue. "We can use the Blackwater Battalion," she said. Everyone in the room became very quiet. The Blackwater Battalion was not a real military unit. It was what people called the soldiers that Earth's military did not want to use anymore. These were men and women who had been kicked out of the regular army for being too violent, too crazy, or too dangerous. Some of them were in military prisons. Others had been discharged for disobeying orders or for fighting in ways that broke the rules of war. They were the kind of soldiers that other soldiers were afraid of. "You want to send our worst people to represent Earth to the aliens?" asked President Clark. "I want to send our most effective people," General Ross replied. "The Coalition is offering us the most valuable technology in human history. But they are desperate. They need soldiers who can win against impossible odds. They need killers." The debate lasted for 3 hours. Finally, they decided to take the risk. They would send Earth's most dangerous soldiers to save the aliens. If the mission failed, at least they would not lose any soldiers that Earth actually needed. The military leaders chose Colonel Ryan Hayes to lead the mission. Hayes was 52 years old and had been retired for 3 years. He was famous for winning battles that everyone said were impossible to win. He was also famous for using tactics that made other officers very uncomfortable. During the Europa campaign, Hayes had defeated an enemy force 3 times larger than his own. He did it by pretending to retreat, then attacking at night when the enemy was sleeping. He killed 600 enemy soldiers while they were in their beds. It was effective, but it was not considered honorable. Hayes had been forced to retire after he refused to follow a direct order from his commanding officer. The order would have saved the lives of enemy civilians, but it would have cost the lives of his own soldiers. Hayes chose to save his soldiers instead. When General Ross called Hayes at his home in Montana, he was surprised to hear from her. "Ryan, we need you for something big," she said. "How would you like to fight aliens?" Hayes listened to the explanation. He thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. "What kind of budget do I have for recruiting?" he asked. "Unlimited," General Ross replied. "Take anyone you want from the detention facilities. Take anyone who has been discharged. Take anyone who can fight. When do I leave?" "As soon as you can put a team together." Hayes spent the next week traveling to military prisons and detention centers across Earth. He looked for soldiers with specific skills. He needed people who could think fast, fight dirty, and win at any cost. The first person he recruited was Sergeant Danny Torres. Torres had been court-martialed for using too many explosives during urban warfare. He had destroyed an entire city block to eliminate 12 enemy soldiers. It worked, but it violated the rules of engagement. Next was Captain Lisa Wong. She was brilliant at military strategy, but she had been discharged for refusing to follow orders. Her commanding officer had ordered her to attack a position that would have gotten most of her soldiers killed. Wong refused and was kicked out of the army. Hayes also found Corporal Pete Jackson, a sniper who had over 200 confirmed kills. Jackson had been imprisoned for shooting enemy officers without authorization. He had a habit of eliminating targets that he thought needed to be eliminated, whether his commanders agreed or not. The team grew to include Dr. Amy Carter, a combat medic who had lost her medical license. She had performed battlefield surgeries that saved lives but violated medical protocols. She cared more about keeping soldiers alive than about following the rules. The last member was Chief Warrant Officer Steve Adams, a computer expert who had been discharged for hacking into military networks. He claimed he was trying to expose corruption in the supply system. The military claimed he was trying to steal classified information. Hayes gave his team 1 week to prepare. They studied everything the Coalition had sent about their enemies. The Vorthak were individually stronger and faster than humans. They had natural armor and followed strict honor codes in warfare. They announced their attacks, fought during daylight, and never targeted civilians directly. The aliens had no idea what humans considered civilized warfare. They were about to learn. The cargo ship Iron Phoenix was not designed to carry passengers. It was built to move supplies between planets. But Earth's military had worked for 2 weeks to make it ready for the mission to alien space. They added weapons, shields, and life support systems for 12 humans. Colonel Hayes stood in the main cargo bay and looked at his team. These were not the kind of soldiers you would see in military parades. They were rough, scarred, and dangerous. Each one had been rejected by Earth's regular military for being too extreme. Sergeant Danny Torres was checking his explosives for the 3rd time that day. He was a small man with burn scars on his arms from working with bombs for 15 years. Torres had been kicked out of the army for destroying an entire enemy base with a single explosion. His commanding officers said he used too much force. Torres said he used exactly the right amount of force to make sure the enemy could never use that base again. Captain Lisa Wong was studying star charts at a computer terminal. She was the smartest person Hayes had ever met, but she had a problem with authority. Wong had been court-martialed for refusing to send her soldiers on what she called a suicide mission. She was right about the mission being suicide, but the military did not care about being right. They cared about following orders. Corporal Pete Jackson sat in the corner cleaning his sniper rifle. Jackson was completely bald and had cold blue eyes that never seemed to blink. He held the record for long-distance kills in 3 different wars. He had been sent to military prison for shooting enemy officers during peace negotiations. Jackson said the officers were planning to break the peace treaty anyway, so he saved everyone some time. Dr. Amy Carter was organizing her medical supplies. She was the only person on the team who had never killed anyone directly, but she had saved the lives of over 300 soldiers by performing surgeries that other doctors said were impossible. The medical board took away her license for breaking safety rules. Amy said safety rules did not matter when people were bleeding to death. Chief Warrant Officer Steve Adams was working on the ship's computer systems. Adams was 28 years old and could hack into any computer network in the galaxy. He had been discharged from the military for breaking into classified databases. Adams claimed he was trying to expose officers who were stealing money from soldier supply budgets. The military claimed he was a traitor. The trip to Kepler space would take 6 weeks using Earth's fastest engines. Hayes used that time to train his team with the alien technology that the Coalition had sent ahead using quantum transmission. The Coalition weapons were very different from human weapons. They were designed to disable enemies, not kill them. They fired energy beams that would knock an enemy unconscious or paralyze them temporarily. The Coalition believed in capturing enemies alive whenever possible. "This is useless," Torres said after testing a Coalition weapon. "How are you supposed to win a war if you do not kill the enemy?" Wong studied the tactical information about the Vorthak Empire. The enemy followed very strict rules about how to fight wars. They always announced their attacks in advance. They only fought during daylight hours. They never targeted civilians or destroyed cultural sites. They believed war was a noble activity that should be conducted with honor. They fight like it is a game, Wong told the others. They have rules for everything. No sneak attacks, no fighting at night, no targeting supply lines, no psychological warfare. Jackson laughed when he heard this. They have never fought humans before, he said. The Coalition had sent detailed information about Vorthak biology. The aliens were insect-like creatures with natural armor plating. They were faster and stronger than humans, but they had weak points at the joints of their armor. Their eyes were sensitive to certain light frequencies. Their hearing was very good, but they could be confused by unexpected sounds. Dr. Carter studied the biological data and began working on special weapons. She created chemical compounds that would affect Vorthak nervous systems. These chemicals would not kill the aliens, but they would cause fear and confusion. Carter had learned that sometimes making an enemy afraid was more effective than killing them. Adams worked on hacking into Vorthak communication systems. The aliens used quantum encryption that was supposed to be impossible to break, but Adams had been breaking impossible codes for 10 years. He discovered that the Vorthak communications had a weakness. They were so confident in their encryption that they did not monitor for intrusion attempts. Hayes spent his time planning the mission strategy. He read every report about Vorthak tactics and behavior. The aliens were predictable because they always followed the same rules. They expected their enemies to follow the same rules too. Human military history was very different from alien military history. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had learned that the only rule in war was to win. Honor was something you could worry about after the enemy was defeated. Hayes remembered a quote from an ancient Earth general. "If you find yourself in a fair fight, you have made a tactical error." The Coalition was losing because they were trying to fight fairly. The Vorthak were winning because they were stronger and faster. But they were also fighting fairly. Humans would not fight fairly. 2 weeks into the journey, the Iron Phoenix received another message from the Coalition. The situation was getting worse. The Vorthak had destroyed another Coalition fleet. They were now surrounding Veltar, the Coalition's last major world. The Coalition estimated they had maybe 1 month before total defeat. Hayes called his team together for a final briefing. He showed them pictures of the Coalition species. They looked like peaceful herbivores. Some resembled deer or rabbits from Earth. Others looked like large, gentle insects. None of them looked like natural fighters. "The Coalition has never fought a real war," Hayes explained. "They have conflicts, but they follow rules that both sides agree to. They try to minimize casualties. They respect cultural sites. They negotiate during battles." "What about the Vorthak?" asked Torres. "The Vorthak follow the same basic rules, but they are much better at fighting. They are natural warriors. They have been conquering other species for centuries, but they always follow their honor codes." Wong studied the tactical displays. "So we are dealing with enemies who are stronger and faster than us, but who fight according to predictable patterns." "Exactly," Hayes said. "And they have never encountered an enemy that ignores those patterns completely." Jackson smiled for the first time since the mission began. "This is going to be fun," he said. Hayes looked at each member of his team. Earth had sent them because they were too dangerous for normal military service. They broke rules. They fought dirty. They did whatever was necessary to win. "Remember," Hayes told them, "we are not representing Earth's best soldiers. We are representing Earth's most effective soldiers. The Coalition needs to survive. Our job is to make sure that happens no matter what we have to do." The Iron Phoenix continued its journey toward alien space. Behind them, Earth waited to see if humanity's most dangerous outcasts could save an entire alien civilization. Ahead of them, the Vorthak Empire continued its systematic conquest, completely unaware that their next enemies would be unlike anything they had ever faced before. The Iron Phoenix dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Veltar system. Colonel Hayes stood on the bridge and stared at his first alien world. Veltar was beautiful. The planet was covered in crystal cities that sparkled like diamonds in the light of 2 yellow suns, but the beauty was threatened. 15 Vorthak warships surrounded the planet in a perfect siege formation. Each ship was twice the size of the Iron Phoenix and covered in weapons. The Vorthak were not trying to hide their presence. They wanted everyone to know they were there. "Incoming transmission," reported Adams from the communications console. The main screen flickered and showed the first alien that any human had ever seen. Military Coordinator Jexthal looked like a cross between a deer and a praying mantis. He had 4 arms, large gentle eyes, and skin that changed color when he was nervous. Right now, his skin was flashing between blue and purple, which meant he was very worried. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Jexthal said through the translation device. "We are grateful that you have come to help us. Though I must admit, we expected a larger force." Hayes stepped forward. "Coordinator Jexthal, I am Colonel Ryan Hayes. This is my team. We understand you have a problem with the Vorthak." Jexthal's skin flashed deeper purple. "Yes, Colonel Hayes. The Vorthak have been besieging our world for 3 weeks. They have demanded that we surrender, or they will begin orbital bombardment. According to the Galactic War Conventions, they must give us 30 days to consider surrender before they can attack civilian targets." "How many days do you have left?" asked Captain Wong. 7 days, Jexthal replied. "We have prepared our defenses, but our projections show we cannot survive a direct assault. The Vorthak ground forces are too strong." Hayes nodded. "We need to see your intelligence files on the Vorthak forces. We also need a detailed map of their positions and patrol schedules." "Of course," Jexthal said. "But Colonel, may I ask what your strategy will be?" "Our military advisor suggests that we meet the Vorthak in honorable combat on the plains outside our capital city. If we can defeat their champion in single combat, they may agree to withdraw according to traditional war customs." The human team exchanged glances. Torres was trying not to laugh. Jackson was shaking his head. Wong was already pulling up tactical displays on her computer. "Coordinator," Hayes said carefully, "humans do not follow traditional war customs. We follow what we call practical war customs. Our goal is to make the enemy leave. How we accomplish that goal is less important than accomplishing it." Jexthal looked confused. "But surely you will observe the basic principles of civilized warfare? You will not attack during rest periods. You will not target non-combatants. You will announce your intentions before engaging. We will not target your civilians," Hayes said. "Beyond that, we make no promises." The Iron Phoenix landed at the Coalition's main spaceport 3 hours later. The human team was met by a group of Coalition officials who all looked nervous. None of them had ever seen humans before. The aliens whispered among themselves about how strange the humans looked. Hayes ignored the attention and focused on the intelligence briefing. The Vorthak had established a standard siege pattern around the planet. Their ground forces were camped in 6 locations around the capital city. Each camp held approximately 500 soldiers. The Vorthak command ship, called Glory of the Hive, was in stationary orbit directly above the capital. War Prime Thakves, the Vorthak military leader, was aboard that ship. According to Coalition intelligence, Thakves was planning to challenge the Coalition's best warrior to single combat in 4 days. "The War Prime has an impressive record," Jexthal explained. "He has never lost a single combat in over 200 battles. Our best warriors estimate they have perhaps a 10% chance of defeating him." "What happens if your champion loses?" asked Wong. "Then we must surrender the planet," Jexthal said sadly. "It is the way of civilized warfare." That night, while the Coalition prepared their defenses for the upcoming battle, the human team began what Hayes called Introduction Protocol. The humans wanted the Vorthak to know they were dealing with a new kind of enemy. Jackson took his sniper rifle to a hill overlooking the nearest Vorthak camp. Through his scope, he could see the alien soldiers moving around their camp. The Vorthak looked like giant ants walking on 2 legs. They had thick armor plating and carried weapons that glowed with energy. At exactly midnight, Jackson picked his first target. A Vorthak sentry was standing guard at the edge of the camp. Jackson aimed carefully and fired. The bullet traveled 2 kilometers and hit the sentry in the only unarmored spot on his head. The alien dropped dead instantly. Jackson moved to a new position and waited. 30 minutes later, another Vorthak came to check on the first sentry. Jackson killed him too. Then he moved again. By morning, Jackson had killed 6 Vorthak sentries from 6 different positions. The aliens could not figure out how their guards were dying. They had not heard any explosions. They had not seen any enemy soldiers. Their companions were simply falling dead from invisible attacks. Meanwhile, Torres was having fun with explosives. He snuck into the Vorthak supply depot and planted dozens of small bombs throughout their equipment. But instead of setting them to explode immediately, Torres programmed them to detonate randomly over the next 2 weeks. The first explosion happened during the Vorthak morning meal. A food storage container suddenly exploded, covering 50 soldiers in their breakfast. No one was seriously hurt, but everyone was confused. 2 hours later, a weapons locker exploded, then a communication array, then a vehicle. The explosions were small and mostly harmless, but they happened constantly. The Vorthak soldiers became nervous and jumpy. They started expecting explosions at any moment. Adams was working on psychological warfare. He had hacked into the Vorthak communication system and was broadcasting strange signals on all their military frequencies. Sometimes it was human death metal music played at maximum volume. Sometimes it was recordings of human war chants from ancient Earth battles. Sometimes it was just the sound of humans laughing. The Vorthak had never heard sounds like these before. The music was harsh and aggressive in ways that their culture could not understand. The war chants spoke of violence and bloodlust that seemed completely insane to the honor-focused Vorthak mindset. Dr. Carter was leaving psychological calling cards throughout the Vorthak camps. She carved human skulls out of local materials and left them in places where Vorthak soldiers would find them. She arranged coalition bodies in patterns that suggested ritualistic behavior. She wrote messages in Vorthak script that said things like, "The Death Worlders are watching," and "Your honor means nothing to us." The most effective psychological weapon was simply evidence of human presence. The team left human footprints in impossible places. They left behind small items of human technology that the Vorthak could not understand. They made it clear that humans could go anywhere, anytime, without being detected. After 3 days of this treatment, the Vorthak were no longer behaving like confident conquerors. They were jumpy, paranoid, and constantly looking over their shoulders. Their sentries were too afraid to stand guard alone. Their officers were receiving reports of impossible attacks and unexplainable phenomena. War Prime Thakvis sent a message to the coalition demanding an explanation for the dishonorable harassment of his forces. He wanted to know what kind of species would attack enemies during rest periods and use psychological warfare. Jexathul forwarded the message to Hayes, who read it with satisfaction. "Tell the War Prime that he is now fighting humans," Hayes replied. "Tell him that humans learned long ago that honor is a luxury only the winning side can afford. Tell him that if he wants to see real human warfare, he should wait a few more days." The message was sent to the Vorthak command ship. War Prime Thakves read it twice, then called an emergency meeting of his senior officers. For the first time in his military career, he was dealing with an enemy that did not follow the established rules of civilized warfare. He was about to learn that humans had been writing their own rules for thousands of years. War Prime Thakves stood in the command center of his flagship and stared at the reports from his ground commanders. In 3 days, his forces had lost 18 soldiers to invisible attacks. His supply lines were being disrupted by random explosions. His troops were reporting psychological harassment that made no sense according to any known military doctrine. The War Prime was 7 feet tall with armor plating that had been polished to a mirror shine. He had led the Vorthak military to victory in over 50 campaigns. He had never encountered an enemy that refused to follow the basic principles of civilized warfare. "The humans are violating every convention of honorable combat," reported Ground Commander Zekthol. "They attack during rest periods. They target supply personnel. They engage in psychological warfare designed to terrorize rather than defeat." "Have they responded to our challenge for single combat?" asked Thakvis. "No, War Prime. They claim they do not recognize the authority of galactic war conventions." Thakvis made a clicking sound that indicated extreme displeasure. In his experience, all civilized species eventually agreed to settle disputes through honorable combat between champions. It was the foundation of interstellar military law. "Send another message to the coalition," he ordered. "Tell them we demand a formal battle on the plains outside their capital city. If they refuse, we will begin orbital bombardment immediately." On the surface of Veltar, Colonel Hayes received the Vorthak ultimatum and smiled. The enemy was getting frustrated with human tactics. They wanted to force the humans into a traditional battle where Vorthak's strength and armor would provide a decisive advantage. Hayes had no intention of giving them what they wanted. Coordinator Jex Thul. Hayes said during the coalition strategy meeting, "Please send a message to War Prime Thakvis. Tell him we accept his challenge for a decisive battle. Tell him we will meet his forces on the chosen battlefield tomorrow at dawn." Jexthul looked relieved. "Thank you, Colonel Hayes. I was beginning to worry that human military doctrine was incompatible with galactic civilization." "Our military doctrine is very simple," Hayes replied. We win. That night, Hayes gathered his team for the final mission briefing. Captain Wong had spent the day studying the Vorthak command ship and had found several weaknesses in its design. The ship's shields were powerful, but they were designed to stop large weapons attacks, not small infiltration teams. The glory of the Hive has docking bays on multiple levels, Wong explained. Security is focused on preventing direct assault, not stealth infiltration. If we can get close enough, we can board the ship during the battle. Torres had been busy preparing special explosives for the mission. His delayed detonation bombs had been strategically placed throughout the Vorthak supply chain over the past week. Tomorrow, they would all explode in a carefully timed sequence designed to maximize psychological impact. I have 37 bombs ready to detonate at precisely the moment we begin our attack on the command ship, Torres reported. The explosions will make it look like we have forces attacking all across their territory simultaneously. Jackson had been mapping Vorthak patrol patterns and security weaknesses. He had identified the exact route the human team would need to take to reach the command ship without being detected. The Vorthak are creatures of habit, Jackson explained. They change their guard shifts at the same time every day. They follow the same patrol routes. They expect their enemies to announce attacks in advance. They have no security procedures for dealing with stealth infiltration. Dr. Carter had prepared her special biochemical weapons for the mission. She had created fear-inducing chemicals specifically designed to affect Vorthak nervous systems. She had also prepared sedatives that would disable Vorthak soldiers without killing them. I can flood the command ship's air system with compounds that will cause panic and confusion, Carter explained. The chemicals will not kill anyone, but they will make it very difficult for the crew to think clearly or fight effectively. Adams had been working on taking control of the Vorthak fleet's communication systems. He had discovered that the aliens' confidence in their quantum encryption had made them careless about monitoring for intrusion attempts. Once I gain access to their command network, I can broadcast anything we want on all Vorthak military frequencies, Adams reported. I can also take control of their internal security systems and life support controls. Hayes reviewed the plan one final time. While the Vorthak forces gathered on the battlefield expecting a traditional combat engagement, the human team would strike directly at the enemy command structure. They would capture War Prime Thakvis and force the entire Vorthak fleet to surrender. Remember, Hayes told his team, the Vorthak expect us to meet them in honorable combat at dawn. They expect us to fight fairly. They expect us to follow their rules. What are we going to do instead? Asked Torres with a grin. We are going to remind the galaxy why humans are the most dangerous species in known space, Hayes replied. At dawn, the Vorthak ground forces assembled on the plains outside the Coalition capital. 3,000 alien warriors stood in perfect formation, their weapons gleaming in the morning sunlight. War Prime Thakvis had come down from his command ship to personally lead the battle. He expected the humans to appear with whatever forces they had gathered from the Coalition military. The humans never showed up to the battlefield. Instead, at the exact moment the battle was supposed to begin, Torres's explosives started detonating throughout the Vorthak supply chain. 37 bombs exploded in perfect sequence, creating the impression that human forces were attacking every Vorthak position simultaneously. At the same time, the human team was infiltrating the glory of the Hive. Using stealth technology borrowed from Coalition systems and modified with human ingenuity, they penetrated the command ship's defenses while the crew was focused on the battle below. Captain Wong led Torres and Jackson in a frontal assault on the ship's main command center. Their attack was designed to look like a desperate suicide mission, drawing security forces away from the ship's critical systems. Meanwhile, Hayes, Carter, and Adams infiltrated the ship's core systems through maintenance shafts that the Vorthak had never thought to secure properly. Dr. Carter began flooding the air circulation system with her biochemical weapons. The fear-inducing chemicals spread throughout the ship, causing panic among the crew. Adams took control of the ship's communication system and began broadcasting the most terrifying sounds in human military history. The ship's speakers echoed with the screams of dying soldiers, the roar of human weapons, and the savage war chants of ancient Earth warriors. But the most effective weapon was Hayes himself. Using the ship's internal map, he began hunting War Prime Thakvis through the corridors of the command vessel. Hayes ignored every rule of civilized combat. He used stealth, deception, and pure psychological terror to stalk the enemy commander. The Vorthak crew had never experienced anything like this. They were used to enemies who announced their attacks, who fought during daylight hours, who respected the conventions of honorable warfare. They had no training for dealing with an enemy that struck from the shadows without warning. As haze closed in on the warprime, Adams broadcast the Vorthak leaders' increasingly desperate communications throughout the ship. The crew could hear their commander's confident voice gradually become filled with fear and confusion as he realized he was being hunted by a predator that followed no rules. He understood. The psychological impact on the Vorthak forces was devastating. Their supplies were exploding, their command ship was under attack by invisible enemies, and their warprime was being stalked like prey through his own vessel. When Hayes finally cornered warprime Thakves in the ship's command center, the alien leader was no longer the confident warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds. He was a frightened creature who had just learned that there were predators in the galaxy far more dangerous than anything he had ever imagined. "You fight without honor," Thakves said as Hayes pointed a human weapon at him. "We fight to win," Hayes replied. "Honor is something we worry about after our enemies are defeated." The message was broadcast throughout the Vorthak fleet. Their supreme military commander had been captured by a single human who had stalked him through his own command ship like a hunting animal. The Vorthak Empire surrendered within the hour. The surrender message spread across the Vorthak fleet in less than 10 minutes. Fleet Commander Rakthas stared at the transmission from the glory of the hive and could not believe what he was seeing. Warprime Thakves, the greatest military leader in Vorthak history, was kneeling before a single human soldier. "All Vorthak forces are to withdraw immediately," came the message from their captured leader. "Do not engage the human forces under any circumstances. Broadcast warnings to all Vorthak worlds about the Death Worlders from Sol 3. These beings do not follow any known rules of civilized warfare." Fleet Commander Rakthas had served under Thakves for 20 years. He had never seen the warprime show fear before, but in the transmission, Thakves looked like a broken creature who had encountered something beyond his understanding. Within 6 hours, the entire Vorthak siege fleet had jumped to faster-than-light speed and disappeared from the Veltar system. They left behind supplies, equipment, and even some of their wounded. The retreat was so fast and chaotic that it violated every principle of military protocol the Vorthak had ever followed. On the surface of Veltar, Coordinator Jexthol and the Coalition leadership gathered in the Capitol building to meet with Colonel Hayes and his team. The Coalition officials looked at the humans with a mixture of gratitude and horror. "You have saved our civilization," Jexthol said, "but your methods were unexpected." Hayes stood before the assembled alien leaders and chose his words carefully. "Coordinator, your people offered us quantum crystalline technology in exchange for military assistance. We have provided that assistance. The Vorthak threat has been eliminated." "Yes, but..." Jexthol paused and his skin shifted to a nervous purple color. "Colonel Hayes, you captured their warprime during what they believed was a sacred pre-battle meditation period. You used psychological warfare. You attacked their supply lines during rest periods. These actions violate every galactic convention of civilized warfare." Captain Wong stepped forward. "With respect, Coordinator, your civilization was 3 days away from extinction. The galactic conventions of civilized warfare were not protecting you." Dr. Lisa Park, who had arrived on a coalition ship to help establish communications, was documenting everything for Earth's records. She looked up from her computer and addressed the coalition leaders. "If I may ask," Dr. Park said, "how many coalition civilians did the humans kill during this operation?" "None," Jexthol admitted. "How many coalition military personnel did the humans kill?" "None." "How many coalition cities did the humans destroy?" "None." "How many Vorthak prisoners are the humans holding?" "Just Warprime Thakves, and he appears to be unharmed." Dr. Park nodded. Then by human standards, this was an extremely civilized military operation. The coalition leaders exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand that humans had a very different definition of civilized warfare than the rest of the galaxy. 3 days later, the coalition honored their agreement and provided Earth with complete specifications for quantum crystalline technology. The data transmission took 2 full days to complete. When Earth's scientists reviewed the information, they realized it would revolutionize space travel for humanity. But the real impact of the mission was already spreading across the galaxy. Within a week of the Vorthak surrender, every major civilization had received detailed reports about the human intervention at Veltar. The reports were terrifying. The Andromedans, a highly advanced machine civilization, immediately began reinforcing their border defenses despite being 3,000 light-years from Earth. They had studied the human tactics and concluded that distance was not a significant protection against a species that could wage psychological warfare across interstellar distances. The Silicon Collective, a group of crystalline beings who had never been defeated in combat, quietly submitted a formal diplomatic request to establish peaceful relations with Earth. They had analyzed the human military doctrine and decided that avoiding conflict was preferable to testing human capabilities. The Centauri Trade Federation sent a secret message to Earth, requesting human military advisors for their ongoing border disputes. They had concluded that hiring humans was safer than fighting them. But the most significant reaction came from the galactic core worlds, where the oldest and most powerful civilizations maintained their capitals. The Council of Elder Races held an emergency session to discuss what they called the human problem. Ambassador Velketh of the Eternal Dominion stood before the assembled representatives of 47 advanced civilizations and delivered a speech that would be remembered for generations. Fellow beings, Velketh said, we have always believed that military power in our galaxy was limited by the conventions of civilized warfare. We have built our defenses, our strategies, and our diplomatic relations on the assumption that all spacefaring species would follow the same basic rules of combat. The humans have shown us that assumption was naive. They do not follow our rules because they developed their own rules over thousands of years of constant warfare on their home world. Their rules are simple: survive, win, and worry about honor after the enemy is defeated. We now face a choice. We can attempt to force the humans to follow galactic conventions, which would require military action against a species that has just demonstrated superior tactical capabilities. Or we can adapt our understanding of galactic politics to account for the fact that the most dangerous military force in known space belongs to a species that considers our warfare conventions to be suggestions rather than laws. The debate lasted for 3 days. In the end, the Council of Elder Races voted to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth and to offer humanity a seat on the Galactic Security Council. They had concluded that it was better to have humans inside the galactic power structure than outside it. Back on Earth, Colonel Hayes and his team returned to heroes' welcomes, though the exact details of their mission remained classified. Hayes was offered a promotion to General in Command of Earth's new Interstellar Operations Division. How many requests for military assistance have we received? Hayes asked General Ross during his debriefing. 17 official requests from different alien governments, Ross replied. We also have 3 requests for military advisors, 5 requests for defensive assistance, and 2 requests for what they call conflict resolution services. Hayes reviewed the list and smiled. It looks like humanity just became the galaxy's premier military contractor. The President wants to know if you think we can handle multiple, simultaneous operations, Ross said. Hayes thought about the thousands of soldiers in Earth's detention facilities, the discharged veterans who were considered too dangerous for regular military service, and the volunteers who would be eager to fight in alien wars. General, Hayes said, we have so many dangerous soldiers that we can afford to export our military problems to other star systems. The galaxy is about to learn that Earth's most dangerous warriors are also our most expendable ones. 6 months later, Dr. Park intercepted a communication between 2 alien civilizations discussing human military capabilities. The message was simple but telling. They asked for help and Earth sent them their criminals and outcasts. What do you think they will send when they decide you are the enemy? The question was spreading throughout galactic diplomatic channels. Every alien civilization was asking the same thing. If humans were willing to send their worst soldiers to help their friends, what kind of soldiers would they send to fight their enemies? The galaxy was about to find out that humanity had barely begun to show its true military potential. Earth's most dangerous warriors were just the beginning.